Today we're going to be exploring a place that Praguers have a love-hate relationship with, and that is the Charles Square. If you have seen this place at night, you know what I'm talking about. I've definitely witnessed some illegal things. Maybe I should have reported them to the police, but hey, it's not like they don't know about them. But if you visit this place during the day, it is actually very pleasant. There are a lot of historical sites that we can talk about, and we are gonna do just that, starting with the one right behind me. This is the new town hall. It was founded in 1377, originally a Gothic building, and in the Middle Ages, people really didn't like it. Guess why? Because there was a prison and a torture chamber right in its tower. So obviously a lot of people were staying away from it. There were also rumors of secret meetings that were taking place in the hidden passages below the town hall, but I have not found any information on that, sadly. Either way, I have another story about the town hall for you, so let's come a little bit closer. Here's the entrance to the tower. It says the best view of Prague. Not sure about that. It's not bad. We've been. Here's how it looks like. What I wanted to show you guys here is this thing, and it is called locket. This little metal bar is an old unit of measurement, approximately the length from your elbow, locket, to your fingertips. It's not this much. So this locket thing was hanging on different town halls all over the city, and it was there because when people would buy stuff from the market, sometimes they wanted to make sure that they really got what they paid for and not less. But as you can see, this locket is hanging quite far from the ground, so people couldn't reach there. I'm 160 centimeters and I would never be able to reach it, guys. And people in the Middle Ages were quite small, so I imagine they struggled as well. And there was a story about a man who was hired by the town hall to stand there and help everyone with measuring things. As weird as it sounds. When he died, his son took over the job. But not only he was not as tall as his father and had to use a ladder, he was also a crook. He formed a special agreement with certain sellers from the market. So when people came here and asked him for help, he would inconspicuously find out who they bought from, and if it was his friend, he would help them cheat. When the lie came to the surface, people were furious and he was shunned, ostracized, and had to leave the market and the town. Later, people said that his ghost was haunting the town hall, especially this place where the locket is hanging till today. I call it Prague's very first scam. Let's go to our next story. One important date we have to talk about in connection to the new town hall is, of course, 30th of July, 1419, because this is the day of the first Prague Defenestration. If you don't know what it means, it is an If you don't know what it means, it is an act of throwing somebody out of the window, which were many in Prague's history, but this one was the first one. So what happened here? In 1419, there was a lot of religious tension between Catholics and people we would later call Protestants, but back then they were known as Utraquists. So on 30th of July, a group of Utraquists was passing by the new town hall when the Catholic councillors hung outside of the windows and started yelling things at them that made them angry. Unfortunately, historical records did not write down what exactly was said, but we can imagine something along the lines of kurva. So the Utraquist congregation got angry, they stormed inside of the new town hall, and they opened those beautiful big windows over there, and they threw everyone out. As you can see, it is not so high from the ground, so they could have survived, but just to make sure, in case the gravity wouldn't do its trick, Utraquists also placed spears below the window. Yeah, that must have been painful. Anyway, let's go elsewhere. Welcome to the jungle. All right. We will be looking for a place to stand. So far we have some pretty roses here that I'm not gonna sniff because who knows what happened to them over the night, but let's go. Right now we are in the north part of the Charles Square, which was known under a different name for a very long time. It was known as the Cattle Market. Little historical context. We are now in the part of Prague which is called the New Town, but it was established in 14th century by King Charles IV, who had special plans for this area, and one of them was to make it a big trading district. So he built 3 big markets here. One was horse market, second one was hay market, and the third one was cattle market. So this is where they were selling, guess what? Cattle. Back then it looked very different though. It was basically a brown field that was not even paved, and there were a couple buildings standing here. One of them, which is now missing from the Charles Square, was in front of the town hall, as you can see from this historical photograph, and it was called Underlag. You would call it pickled herring house or salt shack in English. So this is where they were selling pickled fish, specifically pickled, because fresh fish was only sold in the old town up until like 19th century. They had a monopoly on that. And there was a man who was running the salt shack, and he was kind of like a market bouncer, because if somebody brought weapons here, he had to kick them out. He was also doing a lot of like quality control when it came to goods. This market was also used for special religious events, because there was a big chapel called Corpus Christi that stood approximately in the middle of the Charles Square, and every second Sunday after Easter they were displaying crown jewels and relics there. There were hundreds of relics that Charles IV collected over the years, and they were all brought there. They had specially trained people who were explaining what the relics meant to pilgrims who visited the chapel. It was a very popular event. In 1369, I believe, there was around 100,000 pilgrims who came to the Charles Square. It was also very lucrative, right? Because maybe some of them bought something from the market. Who knows? All right, let's start walking somewhere else and watch your step. Who do we have here? A very old tree. 170 years. Wow. 795 centimeters thick. What? Crazy. Let's continue. Okay, let's stop here. Before we cross the road, I wanted to show you guys this street over here. It is called Ječna, and this is a street that was also used for the market. This is where they were selling pigs. Pigs tend to smell a little bit, so normally they would keep them away from the main market, and Ječna always had this draft of air, so it was kind of like ventilation as well. They had a special map that the sellers of the pigs were using, and based on that map they were allowed to move the pigs from one street to another to keep everything clean. It did not help much. According to historical records, Charles Square, or back then Cattle Market, was a big mess. People were complaining about the dirt and the trash, and eventually the square had to be revamped. But I'm gonna talk about it a little later. Let's first take a look at this beautiful church. Right now we are standing next to the entrance to the Church of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. He was a founder of the Jesuit order. Maybe you've heard about them from Dan Brown novels. Maybe you heard about them because of one of the last popes who was a Jesuit. Either way, they were very, very famous and very powerful, especially in 16th and 17th century in Prague. They were invited here by one of the Habsburg kings to help with recatholization. So they were a Catholic order, and their job was also to educate people and make them Catholic. So often Protestant parents were angry when they would send their kids to study in Jesuit schools. They would come back Catholic, so different religion than them. And if you look on the top of this church, you will also see the figure of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. And it was considered to be a very controversial portrayal of his, because if you have a closer look, you will notice that he has a halo around him. And this halo in ecclesiastical art was used only for two people, and he was neither of those. So it made religious people really angry and upset with the Jesuits, but it's not like they cared. The rest of this building is nowadays used as a hospital, but back then it was the Jesuit Academy, and they built this church kind of co-joining the academy. You can visit it almost every single day. It is an active church. They also have masses inside. We will not be able to walk around and film a lot, but this is how it looks like. Classic Jesuit style, yeah, very over-the-top, Baroque, very beautiful. Right now we are in the southern part of the Charles Square, and this square was completely revamped in 19th century by a man called František Tomajer. There were a lot of plants and trees planted here, and it became this like very nice looking park instead of a brown field that the cattle market used to be. Right now it is awaiting another reconstruction, and we are not sure how Charles Square will look like later, so it's good to have this video as a little documentation. As I mentioned, some Praguers don't like the square. It is mainly at night that it is a problem. I would recommend bringing a pepper spray or not coming here during the night. Nowadays you can find a lot of monuments on the Charles Square. These are the monuments of Czech writers, scientists, and my favorite one is hiding right over there. So let's go and have a look at it. This is a statue of Benedict Rözel, who was a botanist and a traveler. He discovered over 500 types of plants. His favorite ones were the orchids. This is the plant that he's holding in his hand. He was one of the first Czech people who traveled to South America. Once a local there told him that he saw a rare blue orchid that was growing at the foot of the volcano. So he traveled all the way there. He found it, but unfortunately the volcano started to erupt and he couldn't take enough of samples. So the blue orchid never survived the way to Europe. Benedict Rözel also lost his arm to a factory incident during his travels, and he spent over 20 years on the road. So he was definitely a very interesting man of his day. Not many people did that, and not many people do that even today. All right, let's have a quick stop around the corner. Just wanted to quickly stop by famous Faust house. We have talked about this house in one of our old videos that is dedicated to Halloween. I'm gonna plug it and leave it down below so you can check it out later and find out if Faust really lived there. But for now, let's go to our last stop, but definitely not least, because it is a very cool place and probably my favorite place on the whole square. Let's go. Ta-da! Václavská pasáž, Wenceslas Passage. This is where we are going now. Let's go. really like some of the stores here. This is where we sometimes get gifts and tea and coffee and things like that. They have something interesting in the window. Look, they have different tools, but chocolate. Here is a very popular local spot. This is where they have most typical Czech desserts. As you can see, it's quite busy, and I recommend that you don't jump the line, otherwise you will be scolded. But you can check it out. My favorite place, though, is right outside there. So let's go there. And it is a bakery, of course. Maybe some of you remember in one of our old videos we showed you a bakery that was right here. It closed down and then a new one opened, and guess what? It's still good. So I'm gonna pop inside and get my favorite Czech pastry and show it to you now. Got two things. It is called Pražský koláč, and it is the tastiest thing ever. There is cream inside of it. It's delicious. This one is a little more typical because it's with cottage cheese, poppy seeds, and jam. Alright guys, I'm gonna go and finish those. Thank you so much for watching our video, and we'll see you in our next one. Bye!